So the seminar will be took by architect B.R. Bhushan. So hope you'll have a very good time with him. Sir, I would like you to come up on the stage and please give him a big round of applause.
So I will not be presenting it as I have made it. I present it slightly different because it may go little above some and maybe little below some others. So I have to be somewhere in between. Okay. Basically, it's about my belief in architecture, my fairly long career in architecture, what I have understood from that profession, from working with architects and creating architecture, or what I believe to be architecture in many parts of India, and understanding architecture by looking at historical sites in India and outside, and also working with people in looking at their life and their desires in respect of what is generally understood as development. So I am looking at architecture as a multi-dimensional entity, a phenomenon, a multi-dimensional phenomenon, not just one dimension, several dimensions. Of course, you know, it has dimensions. If you take length, breadth, and height, that 3D is not the one I am talking about, but lot many other dimensions, social dimensions, economic dimension, cultural dimension, the dimensions of many things, and dimension of taste. So that is what I am going to talk about, and basically I will be showing a lot of visuals. Even though I don't believe in visuals. Okay. Can you read this? Yes? Okay. Even if you're not able to read, it is only for my clue. I will be repeating it. Sorry. See, all of you are put through some lessons of history, right? Even if you are in the first year, or even if you are second year, third year, some lesson of history you have been taught about architecture. What is the history of architecture you have been taught? Or which architecture forms part of that history? You just think about it, what you have been taught. You have been taught about Egyptian architecture, Greek architecture, Roman architecture, and part of Indian architecture, Islamic and Hindu period, and even later. So all these have been classified into certain eras of history, as has been understood by historians who wrote about people, their kings, their politics,
Indian mic.
their conquests, things like that.
Okay.
Okay?
एक इंटरनल है
So then protect
Indian
our
mic. ये mic से है.
एक ये मिक्स है एक वो मिक्स
एक चैनल एक.
ठीक है
and architecture which has been part of that. So what we know about Egypt? What we know about Egypt? Architecture, anything about Egyptian architecture? 3,000 years ago, or 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, there were some buildings or some archetypes which were created and left behind by rulers. That is the thing we don't know. Most importantly, the pyramids. There are pyramids not only in Egypt, Mesopotamia, in southern America. There have been pyramids, huge things which they have created. When they did not have the technology which we have, they created it. That we know. That the only history we know. And some things which they worship, the temples they worship. Same thing about Greek architecture. We know about Parthenon. We know about the Agora marketplace where the leaders, upper elite people met. All that we know. But very little, all that whether it is Indian architecture or the same thing. We know about the huge things that happen in India. In fact, we know very little about Indian architecture which happened in the early times. Very little. Not because they were destroyed, but because Indian culture has been not so much into building good things at that time. Which were not like that. Our culture was given. So we are left with a history of architecture of bigness, big things, big achievements, big thing which is built to commemorate power of the rulers. That is what we call vast architecture. That is what we have learned as architecture. Same thing continues. And all the theory of architecture which is taught to us is about looking at that kind of architecture which is celebration of power in the society. The power could be in terms of physical power, who wins by physical, or power by in terms of money so that they can buy others, or power in terms of calculated connivance or cunning ways in which they can influence. That is the architecture we know about. But is that the only architecture that we know? What we have come out of it is architecture that is visual. So we think that architecture is a visual art, like painting or anything like that. So it is a visual art. We have learned it, we are learning it, we are looking at it that way. Now, even art on that matter, it happens only at the above level of food survival. If you are under gardener, if you are hunting every day, and you are striving for food, you have very little time to think about art or architecture. Art is something that happens. It's a search for pleasure, which is above the level of food survival. Then only architecture comes. Architecture is one of the fundamental reasons for human existence. Shelter is like food, like clothes. It is something which is required to protect yourself. But that is not what architecture is. Think architecture is. Within architecture is something which separates mind and power. But let us think about it. What is its fundamental purpose? What is architecture? If you look at Bangalore, Mysore, or any region, and coming down to we have people settled everywhere where there was water. Water is fundamental, so where there was water. And then they had, over a period of time, they had to communicate. Roads, paths, places of communication, methods of communication. And that communication is what we call networks, early networks. It could be paths, trains, things like that. People met each other, move each other, to which armies move. So those networks. And networks made certain places concentrated power concentrated. And that attracted development of those places so that cities and towns. If you look at it, how the towns and cities have increased in the last, increased in size in the last 1 century is something which I wonder about. So network smart activities is what pushes us modern living, this modern society and economy, which state efficiency, speed. Speed is the most important thing human beings have pursued. So these two things, efficiency, do things faster, do things better with lesser amount of energy, and do things larger. That is one thing, efficiency, lesser amount of energy, and do it faster, speed. These two are the fundamentals on which we are evolving over the years. Human evolution has been laid down now. And basically, it is the physical strength and the strength of our efficiency, which is something to do with our brains, has been going up very fast. But our senses, seeing, hearing, touching, emotions that comes out of the other senses, that has not matched with the kind of acceleration in which human efficiency has other machine efficiencies increased. So that is a fundamental point. So we have come to a level of architecture. It is still there, it is nothing new. The kind of power show, like the Big Bang. So it is an artificial organization which responds to those needs of efficiency and speed. And you get this kind of architecture. So it happens too few, too here and there. So that is one thing that we are investing in the name of architecture. But at the other end of the spectrum, we have things like this. We have all this in Hong Kong. This side is Hong Kong. The other side is like Mysore. These two are happening with two different levels of technology, but they are happening the same way, creating inhuman spaces in which we live. Is it architecture? Is architecture, do we think this is architecture? If this is not architecture, what is our role? This is a question which I want to ask. Okay. Think about it. Uniformity of big cities everywhere. They appear similar, they are also in substance similar. It's in Bangalore, Delhi, or Mumbai, or there are certain things which are visibly great things happening, exciting things happening, but majority of the areas are below human level. It is happening once year after year. Maybe because the air quality is going, maybe because of the water is not good, maybe because of the chemicals that is pumped in the food, and also because of the scarcity of space to live in, scarcity of space to move, scarcity of public places for ordinary people. So this is deteriorating day by day. Okay. In this process, we have always marveled at the building as a process. The dominance of building process is the most important factor in architecture. We have many times said, thought that is not important. Building process will take care of itself. In the last 100 years or 150 years of modern architecture, we have been taught that we take care of the design. What is that design is still we are not very sure. Whether it is actually making drawings and presentations with that, or how we build it is also important. If it is not, we are being taught that making a design is our job, building process will take care of itself. But it does not. The building process is left to itself. So we have a building process which now dominates the design itself. It has always dominated, but it has dominated the design profession, architecture. Whether we want to like it or not, what is decided somewhere else, whether it is in New York or London or Dubai, it will find its way, that process will find its way in other places. The process is defined awareness. That was not the case in the beginning. We had autonomy in the organic processes. We are losing that. That is something which is losing continuously. The way to build and how to build, we are not in full control of it. The designers or even the builders are not in full control. It is being done elsewhere. Okay. Now, from this, we come to a situation of higher levels of things happening one level, and then, so this is what I have been talking about. The architecture of power, or this, something which dominates your vision, something which makes you feel awe, and that has been the need for architecture, that has been pushing architecture as the major purpose of architecture. Then you look at architecture every day. Every day is something happens on the other end. Okay? So if we have to look at this, match this, can we do anything? So what is the difference? Difference is this. Architecture every day, or architecture should be, any architecture should be multi-sensory phenomenological experience, one level, okay? And that multi-sensory experience is not only seeing, but also hearing. Like this, when we could not hear, the space has become useless for this purpose. We have to, most importantly, we have to touch. The touch is very important thing. And the processes which makes you touch, that the process within the body and outside the body. Okay, the air, all that. And then the movement, the way you go up and down, you feel that. That is also a sense. That sense happens because of a sensory organ just behind the ear. If you close your eye, you can move left, right, you know that you are moving left and right. When you are falling, you will know it. When you are standing up, suddenly you will know it. When the lift goes up, you will know. When lift comes down, you know. So this is that organ. Okay? Kinesthesia. And the smell. The smell is a very important sensation in architecture. And also the taste. The taste, of course, we can't eat architecture, but these are the various different sensations on which we understand, we enjoy architecture every day, or make use of architecture every day. But it is not just the way we have been used to when it comes to powerful architecture. Powerful architecture is largely intimidating, visually intimidating. Or because size is the only thing which can be enlarged to a level in which you can make you feel small. Sound, when it is enlarged, you just avoid it. It becomes noise. Okay? When you do something else like touch, you cannot enlarge it. When it enlarges touch, it becomes beating. You don't like it. So it is the only, you can perhaps use it to intimidate somebody. Okay. So I think any sensible person think about it. Architecture is not just visual art, though it is always tries to be one. It is iconic or high design, monumental. Architecture is a celebration of power and not of life, but everyday architecture that happens every day is the sense of touch largely. Okay. With this general introduction, I am trying to show some of the works where learning from this multi-sensory experience, bringing it down to ordinary level of everyday living I'm trying to explore that aspect of architecture. There are two things which I have said already. One is the purpose. The purpose of architecture is to fundamentally, it is not like art which you just enjoy looking at it, but it is something like a tool. It's a tool's purpose is to make something or do something. It is a purposeful activity, not something which makes you feel good seeing or hearing. Music is something makes you feel when you hear. Art is something you feel good when you see it. Sculpture is something you want to see and enjoy. A film is something you want to enjoy and hear together. A play is also like that. But it is mainly that kind of pleasurable activity. But food is something to eat tastefully, and it is a purposeful thing. You have to eat. And similarly, clothes is a purposeful thing. We wear clothes to impress. Yes, we wear clothes for others to enjoy, to look at and enjoy. All true. But basically it is something to protect us, basically, from outside nature. And also some kind of cultural things which we have developed along with that. Architecture is solely purposeful like that, fundamentally to protect you, to give you shelter, and to give you space for different activities. That is your fundamental aspect of power. It is a tool. It is like a spanner which you use. It is like a tool with which you dig the pod. You use a scissor to cut your hair or cut the paper. You use a pen to write. These are all tools. Similarly, architecture has been a tool. Okay, that is a fundamental thing. So, if that is so one level of architecture has come to, which if you look at any magazines of architecture today, what are the kind of buildings which is reported most often? It's either airports, museums, transportation hubs, maybe campuses, or major vistas of big cities like the Central Vista of Delhi, which are urban design projects, large scale things which is happening, and that is what is being reported. Very rarely houses, individual houses, that is also houses which are done more like an art piece, which appeals to certain types of people, elites. Okay. But that part of architecture which is repeated, the buildings which are repeated, like schools, like ordinary streets, like shops, commercial areas, and houses, these are the things which are everyday life. Everyday life depends on that. That we are not giving much importance to that. So I was trying to look at a process of architecture, how to build that kind of architecture some 27, 30 years ago. And this was a project of a resort near Mysore. That resort was supposed to be, it was called a village by the promoters. So we wanted to create a kind of activities in that place so that it will also look like a village and give the kind of feelings which you will get on, or the kind of romantic nostalgia a village can create. So this is done mostly like not only how it looks, but how the villagers used to build. First of all, there is no contractor. There is no great detailed drawings. You stand there and build. You use people who are artisans who stand and work with you, and you talk to them and make them do. This is exactly what buildings used to be once upon a time. And even now it happens in villages. That is where it was built. This was a very small project, not too big. We used the mud. It was built in 1990 and 92, 93. That is the time. Walls were made of brick walls. The bricks were made of mud, ordinary mud, which was taken out from the same site, stabilized it with cement. We used that to make bricks in a mold. A mold was a compressor. We put the mixed mud into the compressor and compress it with a 50-ton press. That is developed by a lever action simply by using labor. Use that brick. Then we used very labor-intensive methods of ferrocement arches, ferrocement. That is one way of using cement and sand and very little of reinforcement, using chicken mesh, so that it will be not only cheap but easy to make as well without centering. And tiled roof using Mangalore tiles, which was easily available, and using a timber which was commonly available but not generally used. The timber that we used in this place was coconut timber. Coconut timber is something which nobody cuts a coconut tree to make timber. They use the timber only when the coconut falls off. Okay? It becomes too old, 60 plus, and then it falls off. Or it doesn't yield. Its useful purpose is served. Then we use that as a timber. So these are the basic things we tried to use, and it was done in a time more than 30 years ago when the sustainable architecture was not even talked about. Ecological architecture is not even talked about. We did not even know what we are doing in terms of sustainability at that time. Okay. So this is some pictures of it, and then one major part of it are the rooms across a corridor. The corridor is made as a meandering path. See, anthropologists feel that architecture has been stagnant in terms of spaces ever since human beings started creating architecture in a settled way. So you get into a space like this, a useful space, a space where you get into for a purpose. That is one type of spaces. And then there is another type of spaces, is access spaces through which you come to get into this space. These are the only two kinds of things you have done in the human society. So the access here is a very important factor which we don't take care most of the time. Okay? When you look at a hotel, for example, a corridor is always most insipid, most unimportant spaces and mostly drab. Suppose you have a hotel, you have rooms on both the sides, you don't want to stay in that room, stay in that corridor. You somehow want to get out of the corridor, go into the room. The corridors are most of the places, whether it is a school, whether it is a hotel, whether it is anything else, corridors are usually made to be very unhappening place, boring places. So usually the people later hang photographs or pictures or things like that and make it interesting. But that is not the way it should be. It need not be. So we thought of creating a corridor, which is a more important place, a happening place. So we created a corridor which is not straight line. It is something meandering and which is drawn on the... I'm sorry, I don't know whether you can see that. Yeah, I am able to see it clearly. Can you see that? Okay. because the lights are too much. So you see the corridor which is not straight, it goes meandering down the steps, and there is greenery on both sides, and then the rooms are on one side and keep changing. Sometimes on this side, sometimes on that side. So that meandering way, you keep changing the perspective every time. That is one thing. Secondly, this was not drawn in a paper. This was not drawn in a drawing as we usually do. This was drawn on a graph paper so that it could be executed that way by ordinary masons. You make a graph paper, you make the drawing, then that is enlarged, and on the side they draw a graph, actual scale, and then with a stick you make the drawing, repeating it like in the graph paper. So that is what it was done. It was not done by elaborate AutoCAD drawing or even hand drawn. So that is a method which people have been perhaps using most of the time. Sorry. Yeah, and you go up, this is another space. One direction is the similar thing which you see from the other direction. So then you have a staircase. You can see that staircase which is built by a wall. On the wall steps are made. The wall is only about 1 foot wide. On that stones are kept, and then stone is held together by the railing, a steel railing. So otherwise it will trip on one side. So this was done again. So this is a staircase on one side and the corridor. By a sketch like this, which actually the basics is a curved path and the wall is curved, but it is straightened out and drawn like this, which gives all the dimensions. It is not to scale. It cannot be scaled. And the masons just did this. They just did this using this basic information. And they built this corridor and the staircase, which is very simple method. Okay, another view. And similarly, a space frame supported slab with a central pillar and then tile roof on the edges. Okay, this was again designed as a space frame in steel, and this is a sketch from which it was developed and was built. And then there is this kind of thing which has happened. First floor, the roof is, as I told you, is made of coconut timber. Coconut timber makes rafters. The rafters can span up to 13, 14 feet, not beyond that. But the top floor, it's a dancing floor, which required a large span. So that large span timber was not able to provide, so we had to find some ways of supporting the roof. So that was provided by a space frame. I don't know whether you can see the space frame, a steel space frame. On that, the timber sits. Now, that space frame is supported on the edges by various supports, and in the center by one particular center pillar. That pillar was coming up from bottom. They have built it and came up to this level. Then we found that the center of the space frame which was to sit there, which was made and brought to site, and the center of the pillar was 1.5 foot difference. So when you make a mistakes, what do you do like that? If it is done by a contractor, in the normal case, we ask them to demolish and rebuild. But here in this case, the mistake has happened somewhere in between. Who made the mistake? We do not know. So we cannot blame anybody. So we have to work and create a way of supporting it Then we thought of an elephant head like this. You can see the drawing. It is a sketch actually. And that was built like this. Steel sheet was made to work like that. And then you have this elephant head. You can see the center of the space frame on the front side and the center of the pillar in the back. The difference is 1.5 foot. But at the hind side, when you look at this, we know that this is something which would have looked otherwise very drab. It was possible because you are always on the site. You know, you keep going there and you can still do things as and when it moves. That this is 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. It is no more possible or practical in today's world. Okay. Now, in between, we have built a HUDCO housing program we started. We wanted, it was again around that time, 89, 90, 93, 94, like that. Small houses, a series of houses for economically weaker sections. The whole house, which was 12 feet by 20 feet site on which it has to be made, was something like 5,000 rupees including the site at that time. It was a lot of money, perhaps, but not enough to make a house. So we thought somehow reduce the cost. So stabilized mud blocks were used, windows were made as minimum as possible, and the costliest part is the roof. So we thought of a vault roof, a brick vault roof, a curved roof. You can see the section, the sketch, this side, which is like a brick arch. That brick arch can stand by itself because of the shape. Okay? Only thing is, it has to be held together by some supports on either side. If you don't hold it together, when you are pressing from the top, it will try to push the walls away. So we use a tie, and this has to be built without a centering. Centering is what in concrete we put a centering so that the concrete could be poured above. That is the costliest part. So here we use a centering which is mobile. So 1 meter wide centering with something can be put together, put at the top of the wall, and then make this arch, that vault, 1 meter vault, and leave that for overnight, pull that thing down next day and move backwards and again build. It goes on and you complete the whole vault. A number of houses were built, only 12 of them were completed because it was a government project. The contractor gave up. He said, I can't do it. So the project fell through. It stopped there. It was actually given to allottees. 12 people bought it, yes, but they did not keep it as it is. They, over a period when they saw, they have removed many of the walls, they put concrete slab and then built over. So the whole purpose of this is, the meaning of this is that people are not, the housing, people are not so much worried about their house. They are more worried about their living. And the houses which we provide, the government provide, as for very low income people, it doesn't remain with the low income people. Because those low income people who we give it for 5,000 rupees are the people who do not have enough income to repay that loan, the loan given to that. So a house is allotted along with the loan. They don't have a regular income to pay that loan. When they don't have that regular income to pay that loan, they sell it. And the person who buys it doesn't look at it as a small house. He looks at it as a site which can be built upon. So finally, we are building something for not the person who is occupying the house, for the person who is imaginary. That is the main problem with the failure of most of the architecture of mass housing. Everywhere it has happened. Whether not only in India, everywhere it has happened. It doesn't remain with the people. It changes hands. So fundamentally, the people who are at the low end of spectrum, they are not interested in a house, they are interested in a regular income. Employment becomes more important for them. Anyway, we gave up that idea, but we built the same idea several years later when somebody asked for it. This was the Vice Chancellor of Mysore University. Not that he cannot afford a better house or anything, but he was more interested in the shape of it. Okay? It is again, the whole idea of an elitist architecture is how it looks. How it looks is more important than how it functions. But anyway, this started with a section and like a cascading roofs, which can also be used for creating draft, for taking hot air up through these spaces or openings. It's a 3D of that, which was done later. And this is the house which was completed. It is made of hollow concrete, hollow blocks on the roof with ribs of concrete, and they happen in 2 levels and they are connected by concrete again, and there is a set of ventilators through which hot air will escape, and this is the inside, and it's a brick house with a hollow brick vault. And these are the views. And there is a dome at the back. This was also built by bricks with no concrete, no steel at all. It is simply layers and layers of bricks. One layer of bricks put together, it will stand by itself. The next one, it goes up like that. There is no centering. And you slightly keep the bricks in an angle, it creates a pattern. And this is a very simple method. Any mason can learn it in a day. All you have to give is a center and then the length of the diameter or length of the radius. The form will create by itself. It doesn't require a great skill at all. And that is something which we used again and again. Then we built around the same time, a little later, the golf club, where we used a series of domes and experimented with that. This is under the very, very close to Chamundi Hill in Mysore. It is at the background. And there are several domes, just like golf ball, put together. So that is something which the golfers found it interesting. And then tiled roof, and together we built a complex. So this is a view of it. And this is how the brick is built. So you have a center. You can see that in the middle. So this is the place, the center, where a hook is placed and the diameter is, or the radius is given, and the end of it, they arrange the bricks, and you keep the brick above that, and the radius being same, it goes up like that, closes it. And when it comes to the top, you put a little concrete. Now, this doesn't require a great skill, and they will be able to do it by learning it in a particular. Yeah, this is how it looks from inside. This is about, I think this is 35 feet or so. And then we had one dome, which was much larger, 50 feet diameter. 50 feet diameter. We thought of using a geodesic dome to build, but that that requires a lot of accurate building capability which was not available, or when it is available it will be too costly to do it. So we thought of another way of doing it, that is using blocks of 4 feet by 4 feet steel cubes and arranging them one over the other, making it into a space frame. And then scooping it out from inside, several cubes, and that becomes a dome. And then connect the edges together and then make a skin over that. And that is how geodesic dome is also made. But this is not geodesic dome, it is a space frame dome. And this is how it was built. It was looking like this when it was built. But now they have put, see, over a period, it lasted for several, until 2010 maybe, it lasted. That is about 15 years it lasted. Then they decided that they became rich. The golf club became rich. They decided to have air condition this dining space. And now not even a dining space, it is actually a multi-purpose space, a bar. So they asked me, why this scaffolding, let us remove it. But this is not scaffolding, you cannot remove. If you remove it, will fall down. So they put another plaster of Paris dome below and covered it. So it's no more seen like this. This was how it was seen from outside, and that was that time. Then we had an experiment. That was in 2011. In 2011, we thought, we worked in, I was associated with the BMS College, Bangalore. Maybe there are some students here. And this is something which still stands there. 2011, we conducted a workshop with AIS School, London, and Zaha Hadid Code. The Zaha Hadid Architects Office had a research and education division, and that together we conducted a workshop. This was an international workshop. AIS School provided the certificate. The faculty or resource persons came from Zaha Hadid as well as the AIS School, and also we provided the logistics and also part of the support. The students came from Europe, USA, China. There were some people who wanted to come from Pakistan, but they could not, and all over India, and from Sri Lanka. So it was a 15 days workshop to find out how, it was called hyper threads. A kind of shell structures could be built by using software in finding out the form, along with looking at the form, along with the structure and how it could be built. So it's a process. You are not designing a form first and then go back and somebody else works how the structure could be, and then somebody else tells you how it could be built. No, that is not the way we want it. It is just like the village we did. It is the way we design with the whole idea of how it could be built. And it's a very small project. It's 15 feet by 15 feet by 15 feet, or 5 meter, 5 meter, 5 meter, that cube. Compressive structure or the negative structure, the stress you get concentrated where. So this is how it was designed. The form was designed. The whole thing wanted to be built using a handheld tools, using ordinary labor and masons. So this is the form, what you are seeing on that side. This side is the form, final form, and this is the process of building it. First thing is we get the outer frame with the edge conditions. The edge frame is given out by the computer output. It is a steel frame of extruded pipes. The pipes can be put together and it was produced out of the CNC machines, which was not many at that time in Bangalore. And it was not fully evolved. It was broken into pieces and assembled in the site by welding. So we get the frame together. Then the surface of the shell has been rolled out from the computer output into 1:1 scale, printed in big drawing sheets. Then use that drawing sheets pasted onto your clothes. There is ordinary trouser clothes, pasted onto it, and many pieces of it, then cut them and then stitch them together into the shape. And then that shape is stretched onto the edge frame, edge of that 4 edges, which is in different shapes it's standing, and it was stretched onto them, so you get the shell shape. You use that cloth as the base, and then that was the cloth what you are seeing, and using that we put the reinforcement bars, tied them together and put chicken mesh, remove the cloth, then plaster it from inside and outside. It became what you have seen the first. So that the first one, this side, this is still standing. It is standing in VMS College. You can see that it's almost 10 years old. Okay, this gave a lot of confidence that we can use softwares, a design technology which is up to date, but at the same time use a construction technology which is skill-based, which is based on handworking of artisanry, which is available in plenty. So it gives us an idea also that design and architectural design is not just an architect's job. It is a job of structural engineer, construction engineer, the laborers, the fabricators, all put together. And everybody can take a pleasure out of it. So the delight is in the doing. Delight is not in the seeing. Delight is in the doing. So it is like cooking. The cooking itself, that process is delightful. Not just the eating is delightful. Okay. If any of you know how to cook, you know how it is pleasurable to cook. Okay. Now this is a campus which I've been designing almost complete now. Tungal School and a college in Bijapur. It's quite far away, 600 kilometers from Mysore. My friend who is building it, he is the owner, managing trustee. He's an engineer who has been building, organizing people in that area, put them together to build barrages across Krishna River some 15, 20 years ago. Organizing people and using a technology which is much cheaper and easily affordable. So he is the builder. He is also the engineer on site. The campus is designed like this, is the overall picture. And it is, Bijapur is the place which is known for this big gold gumbaz. It's a monument actually celebrating the power of Adil Shah, and it still intimidates people who go there. It has no other purpose except creating awe. Okay, you go there to get inspired. So this is the part of the first building which we built. It's a PUC college, that is junior college, or +2. The whole place is water scarcity is there and too hot in summer. It can go up to 45 degrees or even more. And it can come down to 8 degrees in winter, extremes. And then water is not easily available. Okay? Rainfall is scanty. And landscaping, which requires a lot of water, is almost impossible. And wind is very heavy, and the dust is also there. So we have to take these considerations to build this school. And the soil is only 2 feet on rock. Below that is full of rock. Deccan trap, the black granite, if you call it. So that is the soil condition. So we designed this with a courtyard in the middle and took half of the building partially below ground. We buried half of the building about 6 feet below. We excavated that part. The top part, which you see auditorium, open air theater on the side, that part, if you take the diagonally, that the whole part, it is southern part. We excavated 6 feet below. When you excavate that 6 feet below, you will have to excavate removing the rock. That rock, black rock, we used it for many construction purposes, including making jelly out of it for concreting, or stones for making walls, some walls, all that was done here. Okay. Now this is the plan, and we also decided that because landscaping is too difficult, too costly, too water consuming thing, we created a wall around this building, that meandering wall, which is 10 to 15 feet away from the wall of the classrooms or any rooms, and that wall is perforated wall, so that the air will move in, filtered with a jolly, and in between this space is the only space which we landscape. So when you sit in the classroom, you see that space is landscaped. Okay? Beyond that is dry. Okay. But now they have planted some trees also. Some of the trees, certain types of trees do grow, which can grow in the shallow soil, and also with the recycling of water which we are using for the school. Okay. Now, this is the first floor and the second floor and the elevation. So we decided also that the top roof is going to be very, very hot, because concrete or anything which you use on the roof, it will absorb heat during daytime and radiate in the night, and also in the afternoon. It will be impossible to sit there. So we thought of a hollow roof using hollow clay block, and to create a vault out of it. That vault, which is hollow clay vault, which spans the entire classroom, 27 feet or 8 to 9 meters. We have to span it, and that too without centering. If we do centering, it will be costly. So we decided partially prefabricated vault, as I have shown you in that house. There it was not fully prefabricated, not even partially, it was with a centering. Here it is larger span, so we prefabricated the wall. How? We had you see the section here, see this, you see here, there is a no pointer, so this space. There are ribs which are of steel ribs. On that hollow blocks sit on the side. It is, like it hangs on it. And above that, there are shear connectors and thermal reinforcement is put on top of it. And then you can pour concrete. So you can see that photograph there, the top left, that is a vault. The vault is being just before concreting. And then after all that is done, this is the upper roof. So this is how it looks. And the wall all around. That wall is perforated wall. We have a framework created, concrete framework, that was created without much supervision by the engineer and the masons. There is concrete inside a hollow block, horizontally and vertically. Once that is done, there are two ways of filling that. One is a jolly work using hollow bricks, and other is by cutting a Shahabad stone, thin Shahabad stone, 10-inch stone slab, and is cut, two cuts on either one side, one cut on other side, and then allow them to put it vertically down, the grey color one, and that could be done by the people as they feel good. They can put it like this, or they can put it upside down, or turn it this way. So it is as to what they feel good. And they can also choose which one to use where. So the whole idea is ours, but the execution is basically theirs. This is how it looks now. The stone, the brick jolly, all that is there. Nothing is similar. It is enormous variety. You see this in closely. And look at this brick jolly. It is intermeshed and they are stable. And this is another view. This is how it looks from inside. And above that, there are casuarina poles. And the bottom, greenery, some greenery has come now. This is another view from outside. Seminar halls, the entrance, the inside court, this part, what we are seeing, the steps below that is what we have buried. They are totally 6 feet below. And this is the entrance with the furrow cement and another view of the court, outer courts. And this is the classroom. From the classroom you see the small green patches from every classroom in the ground floor. And now much more greenery has come now. And this is the gold gumbas inside, too dark and is totally intimidating. So we thought of using that. It is very close to it. We can see the gold gumbas from this campus. Using that form as something which could be made with much cheaper way, better way, and also which is more human, where the children will enjoy dining. So it's a dining hall we created. A 60 feet diameter space and free space with a little mezzanine, and about 300 people can sit here or stand. And this is how it was made. The dome was made without centering. The pipes were bent, 12 pipes were bent and to give the shape. And once the concrete comes, these pipes were removed and taken away. This is the process of building. So it's actually, we have to work out the way in which the ribs can be straightened and parallel. So it's a parametric design. That is geometrically worked out using 3D design. Now you cannot do it in two-dimensional drawings. You will have to do it with a three-dimensional drawing only, in three-dimensional modeling only, find out how it could be worked out and how it could be changed direction where it becomes difficult. So, and there, what you find the large gaps, there some concrete will come, that is for structural reason. And this is how, when it looked, when it was completed, and this is how it looks now, and this is how it looks from inside. So where the concrete ribs, there are 4 of them, and inside that we have kept pipes, the vertically plastic pipes, and each pipe will have a glass cover. So the rain will not come inside, but the light will come. So it looks like this, a series of lights on top in daytime. This is the total view, panoramic view of that. And this is the second phase. You see the dome there, and around that we have built 3 more domes and spaces in between. Together it can seat more than 500 people at a time for lunch. So the whole campus has about 1,000 students. And what you find here at the bottom is a hostel, and what is above that is this one is the high school, which is under building. So this is a 3-dimensional walkthrough of how this is going to be built, and now it has come to the roof level, and the auditorium, what you are seeing, this side is an auditorium. These are being built now. That will be the final phase of it. This is the central court, which they can be used, and most of it is by walls of hollow clay blocks and pillars of hollow clay blocks, and then some of the walls, part of the walls is by black Deccan trap. So this is the view, the entrance, and the entire campus is vehicle free. It's totally 8 acres. You can come up to the front, and then the buses will drop you there, and then, or even if the car comes, you will have to park there. Then we have a playground in the front. And then in the front, very close to the highway, we have a treatment plant, the sewage treatment plant. From that, we get good water. After that, we use it for irrigation. Now this is the second entrance by the side of the auditorium and library, and getting into the central court. Yeah. Okay. So this part is complete now. Some classes are going on, but still it is another 4 or 5 months when it will be completed. So this whole exercise is actually used, and we developed several of these kind of videos in parts, more as a training thing. We used that as a training thing to the masons, to the engineer and the site engineer, and how each tile is put, how the the domes could be built, how the walls could be built. It was all given by 3D animation. So it is 3D animation is not something which could be used to show, but it is used to train people, to convert. It is more like a working drawing. They use this. They refer to it. And we also have sketches and some drawings which are sent. And the whole thing is done by remote control largely. WhatsApp is a regular way in which he kept in control. What is happening in the site every day is being sent as messages, and they ask doubt, and we send back our feedback. So we are sitting 650 kilometers apart, but we are almost there. And the drawings go again overnight. And we directly communicate with them. So it is a highly much evolved way in which we used to work some 30 years ago or even before. We are directly talking to the people, talking to the worksmen. We are still doing that, but differently. So now this is the kind of space frames, all that we use. It is cheaper ways of building, trying to avoid centering, trying to avoid too costly processes, trying to avoid middlemen like a builder, trying to avoid people from Bangalore to go and build in a place where there is no great contractor or building technology or the building industry exists. So it is possible to do that, even such places, with the kind of communication network we have and some people who are willing to collaborate. So it is quite satisfying in the sense that it's not only we get delighted, when the people get delighted, the students get delighted. In fact, every time when I go, the students come, the high school students, they come and wish me, and the PUC students come. They want to talk to me about many things. And I remember last year, 6 of the students took architecture after completing their PUC. So this is the kind of inspiration perhaps architecture can give. It is not just exciting. It is something which is meaningful. Okay. So these are some of the pictures. Okay. Yeah. This is the auditorium. This is how the auditorium is conceived as 2 curves intersecting, and both are made of 3D space structures. So this is the dining hall. And the second time when we built the small domes, it is 35 feet diameter, we try to use it as a triangulation. You use the plan into intersection of 3 trusses together in a triangular fashion, which is much more stable than what we do in the first case as a 2 intersecting rectangles. So this is the way in which it was to be built. And this is actually an animation, which I don't have it here. And this is how they have built it finally. The screed concrete was being built. They are applying screed on top of it. Now, this originally we thought we'll use shotcreting. We found a person to quote for it from Mysore, from Bangalore. There are 3 domes and 2 walls together, totally 8,000 square foot. It was good enough for him for 2 days of work, but he asked 1,200 rupees per square foot as the application cost. Finally, they got labor organized and did it. It took more than 3 weeks because each dome took about a week, yes. But it costed them 1/10 of it. Each 1,200 per square foot, it costed them around 100 rupees. So it is 1/10 of the cost. So actually, nobody is to be blamed. The costlier the materials, costlier the technology, it's largely because the people who are involved with that technology is paid more, correct? And the machineries are costly. So that is why it is too costly. But if the masons are raised to that somewhat intermediate level, and if they are able to be paid a little more, they will do much better job, perhaps. But this is something beyond how we get involved with the building industry. This is how it looks inside. And this is how all the domes come together. Now it is still to be painted. And this is the hostel. This is a hostel building. It's complete. And people are living there. Inside the hostel. And this is the final vault has to come. It has come up to that. The work is going on. With that, the building will be complete. And this is the detail of the Jali wall. There is a staircase which goes by the side all the way up. There are 2 staircases. And by the side of that, we have the Jali wall, which protects from sun as well as it protects from people falling off. So this is the classrooms. From inside the classroom to inner court. We have created an inner court in between the classroom and the staircase, small court, so through which the air will escape. There is no windows actually. There is openings and there is a small court. Beyond that there is a wall, and that wall gives privacy to the classroom. So this is from the classroom to the staircase. And this is a staircase. The children are coming down. The space that creates a drama when they come down. This is how the elevation is. This is how the actual building getting completed. Yeah, the staircase. And this is that staircase, which is actually a multi-sensory perception. It is not just movement, it is not just visual, it is also the sound, it is also the touch. You can touch the side. So the material show up. So it is not exciting, but it is something which people can enjoy without really wanting to get excited. Okay? It is something subliminal. You see, music is something you voluntarily hear and excited. Painting is something you spend time to get the meaning of it. Architecture is something you, in the process of doing something, this gets into you. That is subliminal appreciation of architecture. That is where architectural art, the art or aesthetics of architecture is directly comes to you without voluntarily trying to understand it. So that is the essence of architecture. That essence, we try to develop architecture as an art which comes out of constructional process, the process of building, process of human understanding of the space itself. So this is something which I learned, I am still learning from the people, that it is not something which we can teach formally in the colleges. It comes from working with people, working with laborers, placing the brick by yourself. So I used to do that, building the brick walls, and creating a wall which is sculptural wall by placing it and showing that it can be done. And it is not below our dignity to do that. So that is something which is delightful. It has to delight. This is the thing. So that is the conclusion it gives, what the profession be in the future. So this I will come back to it. So that is the thing. Somebody asked me this question afternoon also. What is a profession, what the profession can do? Sorry, this is not there. Okay. The profession is that. It is not that only which supplies labor and architecture to only a select band of people, or the rulers, or the governments, or the corporates, or the upper echelons of economy which makes use of it. Then we are not touching upon that. That is a very important segment. that is not alone, but it is touches everyone's life, everyday life. Like art, which is trying to understand art in their own way and trying to be an artist of international repute. What happens is the architecture, the art is only in the museums. Only some people see it. But that should not be. Art should happen in every day. It cannot happen in only, remain only in the museums. Similarly, music. Music is coming down to people's level. But architecture is moving away from people's level. So this how to bridge that gap. Bridging that gap is to understand the process of creating it. Process of creating it is the construction process itself. That has to be understood. The aesthetic should evolve from that, not from a visual art alone. Thank you.
Can we have a huge round of applause for sir? So I would like to end this session by thanking sir for coming to this annual NASA convention. And on behalf of the council, sir, I would like to present you this memento on behalf of the convention. Thank you.